Saturday morning, and we are out early with the locals to catch the 8 AM train up through the countryside to the hill station of Kailor. It's all very rural, with handwritten train tickets and lots of form filling, but nevertheless the train is on time and we're soon finding our way to our upper class seats. It's all very basic but great fun. The journey is scheduled to take 2 hours. However, we are told that is approximate and can take longer. We just all relax and go with the flow and enjoy the stunning scenery. Partway up, the engine stops for water and lets the passengers take on supplies. We leave the train at the little town of Ong Ban and rejoin our coach for the last leg up to the hill station of Kailor. After an early lunch, we go to the caves of MyanmarPt2, where there is a huge number of Buddha images and small stupas. In addition to the Buddha images, the limestone caves have a vast number of stalactites and stalagmites. We almost had the place to ourselves and were able to wander around admiring all the nooks and crannies. Early afternoon, and we booked into the Green Haven Hotel for a relaxing afternoon. Next day, after a great breakfast, which was complete with table service, most of us took the short bus ride to the start of our trekking point. We were joined by a local guide who was showing us many of the plants and herbs growing along the way. This was turmeric. The locals live close to where they farm, in houses dotted along the way. This was the local meeting area where we found celebrations going on for a child's first birthday party. We were made very welcome. As well as cattle, the selection of produce being grown was amazing. During the day we saw ginger, turmeric, spring onions, Chinese kale, cabbage, oranges, limes, cauliflower, garlic, MyanmarPt2, lemongrass, tea leaf, mango, papaya, sweet peas, avocado, tomato, lentil, beans and just loads of flowers. Partway up we stopped at this family house for tea and biscuits and a look at some of the local weaving. Some of the ladies even tried on traditional outfits.
That one you can see here, she's with
The village was expanding and seemed to be thriving. These girls were on their way to school. The walking was very easy, but hot at times, well over 30 degrees. Later we stopped off at a little local restaurant and had an excellent lunch. Next morning the staff of the hotel waved us off on our day-long bus journey to Mandalay. The first part of our journey was down through the winding hill roads with spectacular scenery, wooded hills, plantations and agriculture. There were lots of teak plantations, all government controlled. After a while we stopped at a viewpoint and bought some delicious peanut brittle. Quite by chance we came across these working elephants, so the bus pulled over, which also gave the brakes time to cool down a bit. In Myanmar there are lots of roadside workshops, and bamboo wattle fences are big business in this area. Bamboo is used for all sorts of building products. Just down the road we came across this workshop that specialises in panels for walls and roofing. No safety boots here. Mandalay is situated on what used to be called the Irrawaddy River and was the last capital of Myanmar before the British took over. We reached our hotel at 5:30 p.m. It was called the Marvel, which was appropriate as it was built over a railway station. Tuesday was Valentine's Day, and after breakfast we were all presented with a red rose and some goodies, men included. We then set off out into Mandalay for the day. Our first stop was the Sheen and Day Kyang Pagoda, or the Golden Palace as it's known. It's famous for its teak structure and carvings of Buddhist myths. The building only exists today because King Thibaw thought it was haunted by King Minden, so he had it dismantled and transported outside the palace walls, where, many years later, it survived World War II bombing. This young lady, having been given a huge bunch of Valentine roses by her boyfriend, gave one of them to each of the ladies. This was typical of the lovely Burmese people. Our next stop was the Kutho Dorpayer, where the entire Buddhist scripture is carved on 729 marble slabs. Zaza gave us a full explanation of the slabs and their origins before we were left to roam around and take pictures. Each slab is housed in its own small stupa. The whole collection records the entire 15 books of Buddhist scripture. Like all these sanctuaries, there was a great sense of peace and calm for both visitors and pilgrims. Coaches are not allowed on the winding roads to Mandalay Hill, so we transferred to the local transport. After a short white knuckle ride, we made our way up the escalator, only for Doug to stub his toe on the way up. Zaza quickly came to the rescue with plenty of helpers. The view from the top is quite extensive. However, on a day like today, you can easily see the effects of pollution on the city. As always in Myanmar, there are rituals to be performed and prayers offered. Our next stop was the glittering 1990s reconstruction of the Royal Palace complex. This multi-layered pyramid is above the main throne room. Inside there are displays setting out the history of the royal families, and Zaza explained to us the complexities of the various kings and queens. This is King Thibaw and his queen, who were the last Burmese rulers before being exiled to India by the British in 1885. In the grounds there is this curious watchtower for the more intrepid to climb. As we were leaving, we came across this young lady who had just come from a graduation ceremony, which was time for a chat and a few photos. After lunch, we made our way to the river for a short journey to Minden. On our way, we passed this huge fish market, which was just heaving with life. One or two people were put off by the water underfoot and the smell. Nevertheless, the fish just looked fantastic. We joined our boat and took the short trip to Minden, so that we could see the remains of what would have been the world's biggest stupa if it had ever been completed. After looking at some of the wider site and a bit of retail therapy, we reached the main MyanmarPt2, which, in spite of being only 1/3 completed, was pretty awesome. It's roughly a 240-foot cube sitting on a 460-foot terrace, and has been described by some as the world's biggest pile of bricks. The deep cracks were caused by a massive earthquake in 1838, and another one as recently as 2012. The other feature of the site is the Mingan Bell, which for many years was the world's largest ringable bell. It weighs about 90 tons and is 13 foot high and 16 foot wide at the base.
It's really soft. Bend down, yes. No? Yes? No.
Outside there's a lovely rest home where they tried to dump your cameraman. For now though, it was time for a bit more retail therapy and a leisurely trip back to our hotel. Wednesday, and we're off again in and around Mandalay. This time to see how the paper-thin gold leaf is produced. Zaza explains how the small nuggets of pure gold are beaten thinner and thinner by men who hammer the gold for many hours until the required thickness is reached. It is claimed that this back-breaking work cannot be replicated by modern machinery. The resulting gold leaf is documented and used by workshops who rub the fine leaf onto Buddha images all over Myanmar. There are dozens of these workshops in a very small area, and the leaf is also used for tourist souvenirs. A short distance from the Gold Pounders Quarter was, what for me, one of the most astonishing places we visited, the Jade Market. This higgledy-piggledy grid of cramped stalls have on display what must be tens of millions of pounds worth of jade. The atmosphere is frenetic, with hundreds of dealers who all appear to arrive on motorbikes. They use special torches to examine the goods and help them assess quality. There appears to be absolutely no security and everything is transacted on trust. In one part of the market there is a workshop area where the jade is worked by hand and very little safety. There must be quite a few highly polished fingers here. Short drive and we were at the MyanmarPt2 pagoda, and after running the gauntlet of traders we come to yet another huge Buddha. Here the pilgrims, only men, apply gold leaf to the torso but not the face of Buddha. There is also a large gong and bronze figures from Cambodia which are said to have healing powers if you caress the part of the body which ails you. A short distance away and we come to this wood carving factory. Again, although the tools and workshop are rudimentary, the level of craftsmanship is exceptional.
That one, see the British style, they use the bullock head.
Next door to the carving we come to exquisite tapestry and dozens of handmade puppets which vary in height from a few inches to almost life size. There was also silk weaving nearby and of course the inevitable retail opportunity. A little later we leave our bus for a local ferry which took us across the river to lunch at a river restaurant called Ave Maria. The location was superb. Right by the restaurant, our horse-drawn carriages were ready to take us for a very bumpy ride to our next destination, Inwa, which was used as the royal capital between the 15th and 19th centuries. Today the site is remarkably rural and a world away from the busy city of Mandalay. The monastery of Bagaya Kayang is constructed entirely of teak, of which 247 posts support the building. Everywhere you look is exquisite carving, giving the site a very special feel. Inside the monastery there's a small school where the young novices are given lessons. They seem to start them at a very young age here. There's also space for a quiet read. All that remains of another palace is the 90-foot leaning tower of Inwa, which tilts at this alarming manner because of an earthquake in 1838. Another short bumpy ride and we find ourselves at our last monastery for the day, and the curiously brick-built Maha Ok Kayang. This royal monastery was built in 1822 and is one of the few surviving temples of the Ave era. The stucco-covered brick creates unusual light patterns throughout the day. The inside is cool and airy from the protection of the very thick walls. An hour before sunset and we have made our way via ferry and bus to the famous Ubin Bridge. This is the world's longest teak footbridge, which gently curves 1,300 yards across the Tang Thaman Lake and is one of Myanmar's most photographed sites. We join the jostling crowds waiting for the sunset at the end of what has been another perfect day.